The day Snoop Dogg met the FBI, what really happened? Dive into the surprising moment when Snoop Dogg allegedly caught the attention of the FBI and how this meeting could have changed his career forever. Hey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support really means the world. In the hazy heart of Los Angeles, where palm trees sway like the rhythm of a G-funk bass line, and the air always smells faintly of kush and ambition, Calvin Cordozar Broadus Jr., better known as Snoop Dogg, was a man who had seen it all. Or so he thought. By the early 2000s, Snoop had already transcended his gangsta rap beginnings. From Death Row Records to making Martha Stewart giggle over mashed potatoes, he was the embodiment of West Coast cool, untouchable, iconic, mellow. But beneath the sunglasses and smoke clouds, something had been stirring for years. Whispers, surveillance, files. The feds were watching. They weren't watching for drugs or weapons anymore. They were watching for ideas. It all started with a beat. Not just any beat, but one recorded at Doggy Style Studios in Inglewood in 2003. A track that was never officially released. It was a hard-hitting, politically charged single Snoop had been playing with. A song that included sharp verses about the Patriot Act, racial profiling, and secret government deals. Though unreleased, a copy of the rough cut leaked, probably through an intern who didn't know the rules of the dog pound. Within days, it was circulating online forums, underground hip-hop channels, and eventually landed on the hard drive of someone very high up at the J. Edgar Hoover Building in Washington, D.C. The lyrics weren't just a critique, they were names, dates, allegations. And though Snoop claimed artistic freedom, someone at the FBI took it personally. Unbeknownst to him, Snoop Dogg had a file, codename Operation Green Smoke. It started back in the early 90s, after the infamous murder trial in which he was acquitted. Even though the case had closed, the Bureau had started seeing the growing influence of West Coast rappers as more than cultural. They saw it as insurgent. The memo read, "Subject Broadus has shown an increased tendency toward politically motivated expression under the guise of entertainment. High-risk influence vector among urban youth demographics. Continuous monitoring advised." It wasn't just paranoia. To the suits in D.C., the rise of hip-hop wasn't just music. It was mobilization. In the eyes of the Bureau, music with mass appeal and political teeth had the power to incite, to awaken. The call came from an unknown number on a Wednesday afternoon. Snoop was at home in Diamond Bar, working on a remix with Pharrell. He let it go to voicemail. Moments later, his longtime manager, Ted Chung, got the same call. "Mr. Broadus is requested at a confidential federal meeting. This is not an interrogation. It is an opportunity." When Ted told him, Snoop laughed. "What? The feds want a verse?" But something about it felt off. The timing. The way they said it wasn't mandatory, but didn't sound optional either. After a long talk with his lawyer and a quiet ride in a black SUV the next morning, Snoop found himself in an anonymous federal building in downtown L.A. The room wasn't like in the movies. No bright light, no handcuffs, just a plain office with a conference table, a pot of coffee, and two men in cheap suits. Their names were Agent Dorsey and Agent Lynn. They were polite, almost too polite. "Mr. Broadus," Lynn began, "we're here to discuss the power of music." Snoop smirked. "Y'all want concert tickets?" "No," Dorsey said, sliding a folder across the table. "We want to know where you're getting your information." Inside the folder were printouts of lyrics, annotated with highlights, notes on references to government projects, drone strikes, private military contracts, things Snoop had picked up from random stories, conspiracy podcasts, and late-night rabbit holes on the internet. It was art. But to them, it looked like leaks. "I'm a rapper," Snoop said coolly. "I speak on what I see." "But what you see," Lynn said slowly, "might be more than you realize." That's when the conversation turned. Not threats, not accusations, an offer. "We have assets in places you wouldn't believe," Dorsey said. "People who move culture, influence minds. You're already doing it, but we think we can help you go further." They pitched it like a movie plot. Subtle influence campaigns, social cohesion messaging, positive propaganda. The government didn't want to silence Snoop Dogg. They wanted to hire him. And that's when he knew this wasn't just about him. It was about the future of hip-hop. Snoop left the building in silence. No handshake, no agreement, just 1,000 thoughts running through his mind. Could he become a double agent for the culture, use their tools against them? Or would any involvement be a betrayal of the streets, of the message, of himself? He went back to the studio. He didn't talk about the meeting with anyone, not even Dr. Dre or his wife. But the next month, his lyrics began to shift. They weren't just party anthems anymore. He wove historical references into his bars. He mentioned obscure CIA programs, African liberation leaders, and economic theory, all hidden behind layers of slang and metaphor. "They talking dollars? I'm speaking codes. From Long Beach to Langley, I unload." Then came Smoke Signals. It dropped with no promo, no label, just a SoundCloud link tweeted at 3 a.m. The lyrics were cryptic, layered, brilliant, a sonic riddle. And in the final verse, a line, "They tried to offer me power. I offered 'em peace. Said the dog don't play fetch for the police." The internet exploded. Analysts tried decoding it. Fans called it the hardest verse since Deep Cover. But for those who really listened, it was something more. It was a warning. Years later, the meeting would become legend, a footnote in hip-hop history, an urban myth whispered between producers and passed down through verses. Did the FBI really try to flip Snoop Dogg? No official document ever confirmed it. No agent ever spoke publicly. But some people swear that after that day, he started speaking a little differently in interviews. More deliberate, strategic, less smoke, more fire. And if you ask Snoop about it now, he just laughs and says, "Man, the government's been on my back since '93. But guess what? I'm still standing, still spitting, still free." Behind closed doors, the FBI wasn't laughing. The Bureau launched what they called subverse analysis, a program designed to monitor cultural resistance assets, essentially artists who might wield too much influence in politically disruptive ways. Snoop's name wasn't just on the list. He was the list. What they hadn't accounted for was the Dogfather's ability to adapt. He didn't rebel. He evolved. Over the next 5 years, Snoop Dogg went through what fans called the chameleon phase. He became Snoop Lion. He released reggae. He partnered with Martha Stewart. He showed up on game shows, kids' movies, and even narrated wildlife documentaries. To some, it looked like a sellout move. To others, it was camouflage. By presenting himself as mellow, approachable, and even goofy, Snoop disarmed his enemies. The FBI dialed down their scrutiny, assuming he had been neutralized by fame and money. But what they didn't see was the movement growing in the shadows. Snoop had begun mentoring a new generation. Not just rappers, but activists, technologists, crypto entrepreneurs. He wasn't just spitting verses. he was planting seeds. The real revolution, he realized, wouldn't come through protest. It would come through ownership. In 2019, Snoop quietly funded a tech startup based in Compton. It was disguised as a music platform, but its real function was encrypted communication, decentralized publishing, and community organization. Built on blockchain, the platform allowed independent voices to share their truth, uncensored and untraceable. The FBI noticed. A second meeting was requested, this time more direct, less polite. Snoop refused. He responded with another track, Protocols. It was released exclusively on the platform, without label interference. The track referenced old CIA operations, the militarization of social media, and even hinted at federal infiltration in the music industry itself. Think you off the leash, 'cause they changed your chain, but they still hold the patent to your pain. The line hit deep. While the public remained focused on gossip headlines and viral dances, a quieter war was being waged, one between gatekeepers and culture shapers. Snoop Dogg had become more than a rapper. He was now a strategist. In 2021, he bought Death Row Records. Everyone thought it was a nostalgic move. But it wasn't about nostalgia, it was about control. By reclaiming Death Row, Snoop reclaimed the IP of dozens of records and artists. He pulled the masters from exploitative deals. He made them available via NFTs and direct fan access. It wasn't just a business move, it was a strike against the very infrastructure that had, for decades, been used to contain black voices. He also quietly invested in independent film studios, educational platforms, and grassroots organizing networks. He knew the new battlefield wasn't radio, it was algorithms. Snoop began recruiting coders, AI specialists, and cultural anthropologists to help rewrite the code that shaped public perception. And deep within federal channels, a new file was created. Subject Broadus, Cultural Sovereignty, Risk Tier 1. Then it happened. In 2022, a whistleblower leaked an internal memo from the Department of Homeland Security. Buried deep within was a paragraph labeled Cultural Disruption Vectors. Among names like Killer Mike and No Name, Snoop Dogg was listed. Not as a criminal, but as a cultural influence node capable of mass ideological shift. The leak exploded across social media. Snoop remained calm. In interviews, he deflected. Man, if I'm dangerous, then so is Bob Marley. But behind closed doors, he tightened his circle. More encrypted calls, more off-grid meetings. He wasn't paranoid, he was prepared, because now he knew the truth. The system didn't fear violence, it feared narrative. By 2024, Snoop had begun laying the groundwork for the future. He launched a youth mentorship program called the Dogg Code Initiative, teaching kids not just music production, but law, finance, media literacy, and coding. He partnered with HBCUs, funded scholarships, and backed documentaries exposing the prison industrial complex. The FBI watched closely, but they couldn't touch him, not without making him a martyr. And Snoop? He had no interest in martyrdom. He wanted legacy. He told his students, "They tried to turn me into a criminal, then a clown, then a puppet. I chose to be a builder." Some of those students would go on to become Grammy winners. Some would run for office. Some would disappear into think tanks, data labs, and black-owned VC firms. All of them remembered the lesson. Power isn't what you hold, it's what you pass on. In early 2025, Snoop received another invitation. This time it came with a name attached. An old friend turned bureaucrat. The message was simple. We don't want to stop you. We want to understand you. Snoop met them at a quiet cafe in D.C. No suits, no guards, just coffee, conversation, and veiled curiosity. He listened. He answered carefully. Then he said, "You spent 30 years trying to figure out what to do with me. I spent the same time figuring out how to move without needing your permission." They offered collaboration, funding, platforms, influence. He declined. "I already got all that, and I didn't need your help to get it." They parted ways respectfully. But they knew they hadn't recruited a partner. They'd encountered a sovereign. Today, the meeting remains classified. The public may never know the full extent of Snoop Dogg's interactions with the federal government, but they feel its echo in music that moves beyond entertainment, in platforms that challenge censorship, in voices that speak with coded courage. In a world saturated with noise, Snoop Dogg became the signal. He didn't start a war, he started a wave. And when the books are written, they won't just say he was a rapper. They'll say he was a blueprint. Because Snoop didn't just meet the FBI. He outlasted them. He evolved past them. And in doing so, he taught a generation how to code their resistance into rhythm, how to hide revolutions inside refrains. And that's the real power they never saw coming. By mid-2023, the frequency had grown into something more than a secret network. It had become a distributed movement, fluid, anonymous, and borderless. It wasn't a label. It wasn't a collective. It was an idea that culture, when encrypted with intention, could become the most effective tool of liberation. Snoop's studio in Long Beach had transformed into more than a musical haven. Behind the walls of what used to be a platinum record shrine now lay high-spec servers, air-gapped terminals, and biometric locks. The Dogfather was now the overseer of a hybrid facility, half recording space, half covert data lab. Here, engineers developed autonomous beat generators that embedded frequencies known to trigger emotional responses. Sound designers layered ancestral rhythms with synthetic tones that bent around neural expectations. It was less music, more mind alteration. In one room, a small team of former game developers were creating interactive videos with deep branching narratives. A single video file that could present up to 200 unique variations depending on the viewer's location, time zone, device, and even mood, inferred via tone of voice and keystroke rhythm. These weren't just music videos. They were perception filters, behavioral switches. You didn't watch them. They watched you back. And yet, none of this broke any laws, at least not clearly. The FBI's second official notice came on July 11, 2023. This time it was more than a request. It was a subpoena in disguise, wrapped in the language of National Cooperative Evaluation. What it meant, in essence, was, "We see what you're doing, and we're scared." Snoop declined. Publicly, he played it cool. Privately, he escalated. Protocols 2 dropped that September. It was 12 minutes long, no hook, no chorus, just dense verses laced with historical references, obscure law citations, and economic warfare theory. It opened with, "They hit me with subpoenas, I hit back with subroutines, lay in code like traps in congressional machines." It wasn't on Spotify, it wasn't on Apple Music. It was broadcast once, on a pirate radio burst that hijacked over 400 local stations across 3 continents. For 12 minutes, no commercials played, no DJs cut in. Just one unbroken stream of lyrical assault, translated automatically into 15 languages in real time. And then it vanished. No replay, no repost. Only those who caught it heard the whole thing. The next week, Snoop went silent. For 3 months. No social media, no appearances, no leaks. Conspiracies flourished. Had he been taken? Was he in protective custody? Was he dead? Then came the archive drop. On December 14, 2023, an encrypted archive appeared on the Interplanetary File System, IPFS, accessible only by a cryptographic key hidden in a freestyle verse, performed live by a young rapper in Lagos. The archive contained a cache of documents, nothing classified, but highly revealing. Contracts between data firms and political campaigns, white papers on predictive protest suppression, internal memos between tech giants discussing behavioral pressure points in influencer audiences. At the bottom was a letter, unsigned, but written in unmistakable Snoop cadence. They've been asking where I'm at. Truth is, I never left. I just moved sideways. You know, ninja style. While they chasing followers, I'm tracking frequencies. You want to know what's next? Learn to listen between the bars. From that moment, the myth took over. Snoop Dogg had become more than a cultural icon. He was now a ghost in the machine. A presence without platform. A signal embedded into the digital bloodstream of the world. He no longer needed to tour. His influence wasn't limited by geography, age, or algorithm. Every time a young artist spit a verse about freedom using a metaphor only older heads could decode, Snoop was there. Every time a beat sampled a sound banned in one country but legal in another, Snoop was there. He was no longer a man. He was momentum. Meanwhile, the FBI had quietly shifted resources. Operation Green Smoke was retired, replaced by a new task force, Project Resonance. Its goal was broader, less about Snoop specifically, more about what he represented. They no longer saw him as a threat to security. They saw him as a threat to control. In early 2024, the Bureau convened a summit, not with artists, not with spies, but with semioticians, rhythm scientists, neuroeconomists, and even TikTok algorithm engineers. The topic was unprecedented. What happens when story becomes strategy? When rhythm becomes resistance? They came to one conclusion. You cannot censor what you can't decode. So instead, they tried to drown it. Budgets were increased for distraction campaigns. Viral trends were seeded. Every 20-year-old was nudged toward dopamine loops. Snoop's influence became a watermark, visible only to those who knew how to tilt the frame. And still, it grew. By late 2024, he had appeared, without warning, on the final episode of a decentralized podcast recorded entirely in the metaverse. His avatar? A shifting mosaic of ancestral African masks and futuristic visors. His voice? Modulated through analog filters to sound like it was recorded in a vinyl pressing plant in 1974. The title of the episode, The Day I Met the FBI. It wasn't a tell-all, it was a riddle. The episode lasted 44 minutes and 44 seconds. It included 7 minutes of silence, 9 minutes of spoken word poetry in reverse, a reading from the 13th Amendment over a dubstep beat, an interview with a disguised voice claiming to be Agent Lynn, and a freestyle that ended with the line, "When they study the dog, they won't find prints, just paw steps echoing in the blueprint." The internet lost its mind. In the aftermath of the podcast drop, the media landscape fractured. Major outlets ignored it, pretending it never happened. But underground forums, academic circles, and cryptic subreddits buzzed with theories, breakdowns, and frame-by-frame analyses. People debated whether it was performance art or a call to arms. Linguists parsed every phrase. Coders tried to extract patterns from background sounds. Musicians sampled the episode in secret tracks. The file became an artifact, a relic, a cipher. And then came the first ripple. A young activist in Atlanta embedded a Snoop sample into a grassroots video campaign about local housing policy. Within a week, the city council had received over 40,000 calls. Then, a graffiti artist in Barcelona painted a mural of Snoop wearing a mask of Anansi the spider, West African trickster god and storyteller. The mural included QR codes that led to a nonprofit supporting anonymous whistleblowers in repressive countries. In São Paulo, a DJ played a remix of smoke signals layered with indigenous chants and local protest speeches. People started calling it the Dogg effect. The FBI, now under pressure from multiple internal watchdogs and congressional scrutiny, couldn't act overtly. Any move against Snoop now risked mass exposure, and worse, mythologizing him further. The more they tried to box him in, the more he diffused, like smoke through fingers. Meanwhile, Snoop had gone full underground. He appeared briefly, physically this time, at a closed-door symposium in Accra, Ghana. The topic? Cultural sovereignty in the age of surveillance. There, he shared a stage with Nigerian crypto economists, South African data rights lawyers, and Caribbean storytellers using AI to preserve dying languages. He didn't perform. He lectured. Quietly. Thoughtfully. Wearing robes. No chains. A leaked recording of his closing remark went viral. If our ancestors hid knowledge in drums and hymns to survive captivity, then what's stopping us from hiding revolutions in rhythms today? By early 2025, The Day Snoop Dogg Met the FBI had become more than a podcast title. It became a global case study. Universities taught seminars on it. Art collectives referenced it. Intelligence agencies translated it. Everyone wanted to know, was this all orchestrated? Had Snoop outplayed the most powerful surveillance empire on Earth? Or had the system merely adapted to him? One internal NSA memo stated, Subject: Broadus remains operationally elusive, but his mimetic influence continues to accelerate among under 35 global urban cohorts. Direct interdiction not advised. Recommend narrative softening via humor-based reframing. Translation: Make him seem harmless, funny, old, high. So late-night hosts made weed jokes. Corporate brands launched Snoop-themed snacks. Talk shows brought him on to talk about dog grooming, food recipes, or Super Bowl commercials. It was an attempted cultural defang. But Snoop smiled, played along, and kept building. The Dog Code initiative expanded into 17 cities. He quietly partnered with hacker conferences in Germany and Japan. He helped launch a decentralized publishing platform in Nairobi. He funded AI research focused on bias elimination in machine learning systems. His fingerprints were nowhere. His influence? Everywhere. In March 2025, a high-ranking cybersecurity official resigned. In their resignation letter, which leaked to the press, they wrote, "I joined this department to protect freedom. Instead, I was tasked with neutralizing it in rhyme and rhythm. The future is being written in verses, and we're still stuck in code." That same month, a rumor circulated. Snoop had been approached by the UN to serve as a special cultural envoy for digital sovereignty. The UN denied it. Snoop said nothing. But a week later, a video surfaced, a child in Senegal rapping one of Snoop's verses, translated into Wolof, about economic injustice and land rights. Behind him, on a chalkboard, was written, "Sovereignty is in the story." By summer 2025, he'd effectively become a symbol not of resistance, but of redesign. A blueprint for how to reclaim voice in an age when every voice is commodified. He didn't burn the system. He rewrote it. In rhythm. And in one final leaked clip, allegedly from an internal DOJ training video titled Cultural Risk Assets Response Protocols, an instructor points to a screen with Snoop's face, saying, "You see this man? This isn't just a rapper. This is what happens when narrative, technology, and influence converge without permission."